From the Charleston County School District's 2020 budget to schools in North Charleston and downtown Charleston, I speak exclusively with former Charleston County School Board member Elizabeth Moffly for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. And listen to this interview later on iHeartRadio. Elizabeth Moffly, it's so good to see you again.
Thanks, Quintin. It's great to see you.
You're welcome. The last time I saw you was actually here on FaceTime. I was at the Apple store and I FaceTimed you.
That's true.
And you gave me a tour of your magnificent home.
I did, in my pajamas.
That's right. Did I see that part? No.
I was in my red Republican robe.
That's right. But hey, it's a magnificent house. I love it. Now, hopefully I can get out there one day and see it physically.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring you back on Quintin's Close-Ups because there's so much to go talk about when it comes to 75 Calhoun Street. I want to begin with the obvious. Obviously, this is coming from Kobe Saddlefield of Channel 5. She says this on Twitter yesterday. Rumor dispelled. Charleston County Superintendent Dr. Postway says, despite rumors on social media, there are no talks, discussions, or recommendations to close Burke or North Charleston high schools. You say.
What about Garrett? You know, on the referendum, the board voted for specific language that said we were going to put the CAS at Garrett. That's the language we voted on. But the language that the CFO put in the referendum was a standalone CAS in North Charleston, excluding Garrett, which has led that, set that school up for failure. And I think they've already been told this year that they needed to put in applications for other positions because they were closing that school.
Let me go back to this. She also says, she said this in the tweet, she says, there are no talks, discussions, recommendations to close Burke and North Charleston High School. Let me ask you this. What talks, discussions, or recommendations should they do right now as far as trying to keep these schools open?
Well, you probably remember when the past superintendent, Nancy McGinley, wanted to combine Stall and North Charleston High School. And they told that to us in the middle of a board meeting. It was a committee meeting. That they were already up there passing out flyers and telling everybody at North Charleston that we were closing the school, and the board had no notice. We hadn't taken any action, and I was completely against it, which it didn't end up happening. So I think North Charleston is doing a lot better. It was doing better under whatever that guy's name was, Grimes.
Oh, yes.
He sort of pulled it together. It was, I know that they were unhappy because it was Juanita Middleton, I think, was the principal there. And they did a lot of shuffling. I think North Charleston High School had, 9 principals in 11 years. So I think under, who's there now, Darby?
Yes.
And supposedly he's doing a really good job up there. But as I told Nancy when she was wanting to close North Charleston, I said, until you do something at the elementary and the middle school, you will continue to have failing high schools. You can't just let these kids not learn the basics and expect them to perform in high school. There's a process.
What should that process be now to try to work with these particular underperforming schools in your mind?
Well, I did agree with, having literacy interventionists at school. And if you looked at, we had a very detailed report, we test those kids to the minutia. And even if they were passing and reading on grade level, if they were just passing, they would still consider them not reading on grade level, which I found ridiculous. But I do think, especially in our lower performing schools, reading interventionists who understand how to teach reading, how to diagnose learning disabilities. A lot of that is learning disabilities that aren't being diagnosed. You have dyslexia. And 2, at an early age, reading is probably one of the hardest things we learn to do, and we learn it as children. And for myself, I did all those things that a parent's supposed to do and read to your children, and they still all struggled until 3rd grade. There's this, they become actually more students at 3rd grade. In kindergarten through 2nd grade is more of we're over testing that age group, by the way. And because I think what we're using one standardized test instead of looking at the child as a whole to determine whether they're succeeding or failing. And I think that method is failing us because, we are born unique under our Creator, and we all have different abilities. And I think standardized testing has been the downfall.
What method should they use now to use tests to test kids?
For diagnostic, we were using the map for teachers to know where kids were reading. I mean, we've got it down to like you're in first grade, so it's first grade in the first month, so it's 1.1, and so we can test you and know, if you're at 1.5, then but it's only the first month. 1.5 would be the fifth month. But it gives the teachers an idea of where you're struggling and where you need more help. But reading is really about repetition. And what I learned with my kids, it was the sight words that you can't draw, like the, and, but, which, there, who, where, what. Those words are the words that you need repetition, because if you don't, you can see dog, you see it written,
Right.
you get both a visual
Right.
and a written.
Sure.
But those other words are very difficult for kids.
What else is difficult for kids right now in the Charleston County School District in your mind?
I think over testing. One of the things that I came across and I realized is the legislature finally got smart, because Inez Tannenbaum, when she implemented the No Child Left Behind, it said we had to have some end of the course exam. But it didn't say that end of the course exam had to be passed in order to graduate. It didn't say that it was the only test to be considered to determine whether you pass. It didn't even need to be included in your grading scale. South Carolina has made it 20% of your grade, the end of the course, because they're trying to make the kids have skin in the game. But we also made it so if you didn't pass this one single end of the course test, then you could have had an A in the class. We were going to fail you in the class. So the legislature wrote legislation that said that the end of the course would not be the sole deciding factor of whether you pass the course or not. But if you go to West Ashley in the student, the academic handbook, they still say it is a requirement to be able to graduate or to pass that course, to pass the end of the course exam. Even the policy at CCSD has not been changed. It still says that it is included and you have to pass it or you're going to fail it, when the law has changed, sadly.
What policy should they change right now?
Well, they need to correct that one because it's not in sync with state law. So, and the other thing that the legislators did was they said, whenever we started doing the end of the course, it might have been in 1991, I'm not sure, that anyone who did not graduate from 1991 to now could appeal that to the local board, who then would make sure you had the credits that you were required to have to get your diploma, so that you can still get a diploma if you didn't pass your end of the course, and that was the only deciding factor on your not graduating from high school.
You talk about those local boards. I got to take you to the debate over the constituent school boards. Are they alive or dead in your mind?
Well, everybody's been trying to kill them, basically, for a long time. I was a proponent of giving more power to the local school boards. I actually got every constituent board, I got them to sign off on wanting to give more power to the local level. And because I tried a resolution through the GOP, and then they kind of poo-pooed me. They said you need to go out and get more grassroots support. So I went to all the constituent boards, and the majority of the constituent boards are Democratic. They're Democrats. They're not Republicans, the majority of them. And they all agreed 100% that they would like to have their powers restored to the local level so that they could make decisions about, the hiring of principals, so they would know their principals, they would know their teachers, they would be taking up the disciplinary actions, which the district tends to overshadow that power anyway. And we already give them budgeted we give them a budget, so every school already has their own budget that they're allocated at the beginning of the year. So there's really no reason for the big board to be micromanaging the local constituent boards. I think, 1, 2, Mount Pleasant is what, the ninth largest city in the country now. But we have three of the biggest cities in South Carolina right here in Charleston, which is North Charleston, the city of Charleston, and Mount Pleasant.
Right.
And this one consolidated board really has no idea what's happening in each of those areas. For instance, North Charleston. And the schools there.
Schools there. I'm going to get back to that in just a second. I want to talk to you about the FY20 budget, basically 2020 budget. According to WCB, the Charleston County School District, that is, met on Monday to discuss the fiscal year 2020 budget. Charleston County School District says that the budget is still in developing phases. However, it is already showing an increase in the fiscal year 20. Can you talk to me more about that?
I think the increase that they're talking about is expenditures. If you read the article that Paul Bowers had in the paper today, and it's always true with the district, and they always wanting to go after, everybody's house money, your personal house. They don't like Act 388, which I was a big fan of, because they can't live within their budget, and so they would always increase the millage on your house, which it was getting out of control, which is the whole reason Act 388 was implemented. So it was a statewide 1 cent sales tax that everybody pays into. Even if you don't own a house, you pay into it. But they can't seem to live within their budget. They outspend their revenue. And that's going to be a big problem, because these raises that they're wanting to give to the teachers is going to be unsustainable. In addition, we're going to have a really big slap in our face as taxpayers is getting ready to happen, because they voted on those Centers for Advanced Studies.
Right.
We got one in Mount Pleasant initially because the district knew if we put something in Mount Pleasant, then every other area would be crying foul play when we really needed a second high school. So they gave it to us so that they could build them in West Ashley and North Charleston. We have the money to build it from the 1 cent sales tax referendum, but we don't have the money for operations. So it's going to be very interesting.
How much would operations cost?
But nobody knows.
Wow.
Nobody knows.
Wow.
Not even the district. They're not telling anybody. So tell me, how's that going to work?
Oh, well, I got to stay out of that. But let me read the rest of this article. It says the Charleston County School District says that they are standing in line with the state's 5% increase for teacher salary proposed by Governor Henry McMaster. Teachers will receive a 4% raise and an additional 1.9 step increase. Is that possible?
They say they have the money set aside for now, and the legislature's probably supposedly to, also kick in to that pot of money from the state. So it's all about sustainability. Because the legislature, they make us give step increases. Even if you don't have the money in your budget, by law, you're required to give step increases. And, there is a lot of talk about teacher salaries, and, I'm in the private sector.
Right.
I don't get raises. I'm self-employed. I have to pay for my own pension. I have to pay for my own dental, my own medical. But our base pay, which has actually increased since when I was on the board, I think we're now up to a little over $38,000. But if you add, I think it's an additional $20,000. It was $35,000 was the base pay, plus benefits was $55,000. Because we pay your benefits, we pay towards your pension, we pay medical up as part of the salary.
Sure.
So, if you really think about $55,000, most people would have to work year round. And I had a teacher tell me, teachers don't find it very funny, but I still think it's funny, that there's 3 reasons to be a teacher: June, July, and August. So you're only working 9 months of the year.
Sure.
And you have 3 months off vacation.
Right.
I mean, who doesn't want 3 months of vacation? Most people that make $55,000 have to work year round, and if they're lucky, they build up to 2 weeks. So,
And I know
tell me, that's a hard job.
And I know Don Kennedy.
I know he'll get trouble for that.
And I know Don Kennedy, the CFO for the Charleston County School District, told Channel 2 this quote: teacher pay became a priority last year for the fiscal year 2019 budget when the board agreed to increase teacher pay over 3 years. Why was it a priority last year and not over the past 4 or 5 years?
Oh, it was a priority. We increased teacher pay when I was on the board. It's always been a priority, something that we've always done. And there's a reason teachers leave the profession. It's not necessarily money, but it is the the over testing, they don't have the freedom to teach. There's paperwork. I mean, it's just, and your hands are tied. So, most teachers, when my kids were in school and I would question things, they would say, well, that's the way it is and there's nothing you can do about it. And that really frustrated me, which got me to run for the state superintendent of education,
I
because
remember
don't
that.
tell me no. Don't tell me no.
Nobody tells Elizabeth Moffly no.
No.
But the article goes on to say this, and this is from Taylor Murray of WCPD. She wrote this in the article. The Charleston County School District says that the overall budget is still in discussion, but just like teacher pay, increasing and reallocating funds for effective student programs is also a priority. What are those effective student programs now?
I love educational speak. It just, they talk in a circle and it means nothing. Best practices, lessons learned, student achievement, the gap. If you look at the motto for CCSD, I think they've since changed it, but it was access, opportunity, and the achievement gap. It was like, don't those all mean the same thing? But programs, just for the sake of programs, I will say that I do think the literacy program is a good program in the elementary schools.
Okay.
I think that is worthy of funding. But the rest of these programs, for instance, especially in high school, by law we are supposed to have a seamless alignment from secondary education to higher education for college admissions. And we have only one high school diploma that is geared for everybody going to four-year college, even though we know not everybody's going to go to four-year college. And if you don't get that diploma, then you don't get a diploma, and then you don't get to go to Trident Tech. But the CHE, the Commission of Higher Education, has specific 19 credits that are required for four-year colleges to look for high school students in South Carolina. They can make an exemption for out-of-state. But in South Carolina specifically, you have to have these 19 credits in order to be considered for college admissions. But you can't graduate from a South Carolina high school unless you have 24 credits. So, if you want to talk about finding money, I did this exercise, I think, in 2010. I went to the state and I looked at the incoming freshmen, how many incoming freshmen across the state there was, and what the median cost per student. And at that time, I think it was like $12,000. Maybe it was 50,000 freshmen coming in. And so you take, 50,000 multiplied by 12,000 times that 5 additional credits. That's a big number. And the majority of those elective credits are just introductory courses that you don't even get a credit towards any kind of certification in that field. So to me, it's a waste of money.
How much money would all this cost when you add these programs?
More than we have.
Okay.
I know that.
Yeah.
Well, at one time they were trying to take over all the recreation facilities. They were trying to take over Mount Pleasant Rec. Mount Pleasant has a very organized recreational program where you play basketball, soccer, football. And at one time, the district was wanting to take over all the athletic programs and run them, which we didn't have the money for that either. And additionally, this is something else because they like control, and if they don't have total control, then they're not happy. Because we used to be in partners with the Park and Recreation, and they paid into the program too with those educational programs. You've seen those little brochures,
Sure.
says Charleston County.
Right.
It's Charleston County School District.
Right.
Well, we were in partnership with the County Parks and Recreation, and we split those costs. But we kicked the Parks and Recreation out. Somebody did. I didn't. And we took over the whole burden of paying for all those programs, which are like, come to Burke and we'll teach you French in a week. Pay $35 to attend.
And I know that you obviously you talk about Burke. What is going on with Stony Field? What's the delay in your mind?
I think that's a good question for John Zecklenberg. It's always put on. We do not own Stonyfield.
Right.
The city owns Stonyfield. I think we did put Stonyfield on the referendum for some renovations. So the question is, where's that money for the renovation of Stonyfield? But again, I don't like duplicating services. So like the city built that basketball court across from Burke. Well, Burke has a beautiful, brand new basketball court. Why do we have the district's basketball court and the city's basketball court across the street from each other? Tell me what a waste of money that was.
How much did that cost?
I have no idea.
Earlier you talked about Mount Pleasant schools, and I know just recently, yesterday I believe, they talked about a potential that is new R&D school. How does that sit in your mind?
Well, it's not going over very well with some people because there's no sewer.
Okay.
And so I have a letter to talking about that from, I think it's the Conservation Land Group.
Right.
They want to, there's a developer up there that was doing a residential neighborhood, so they want to piggyback with the school district and run their own sewage system, but then they want to spray the effluent in this new park that we just paid $5.2 million for to get rid of the waste.
Sure.
And that's really not going over very well right now.
Well, right now.
No.
I want to turn it over to the Charleston County Republican Party.
Oh yes, those people.
I don't think you were in the party.
We're like boxing it out right now.
But there's a lot of controversy there as well.
You know, that is true.
Who in your mind will be the ideal person to lead that party?
Well, one of the things that we always say is we need to recruit more youth into the party. And at the last party executive meeting, I did state that I was supporting Joe Bowers. We have John Kuhn and Joe Bowers.
Right.
And so the party's kind of split, and people are kind of angry that, if you're not for this candidate. But it's like any election, us Republicans, we put lots of candidates in the field, and you just pick one that you like to vote for. But, we talk about youth, and I told him, I said, I see more obituaries than I see birth announcements in our party. And if we want to grow the party and want this party to succeed, you have to bring in the younger people. And I think Joe Bowers he's been very instrumental in organization and events, and he served in multiple capacities, and he has a lot of support. But that'll all depend on the convention, which we're having at Orange Grove on the 21st.
Right.
No, maybe it's the 24th. I think we do our reorg on the 21st. And so there's a lot of, trying to get the right delegates. If you're for one candidate, you want delegates that are going to vote for that candidate, or for the other candidate, you're trying to get the delegates so you out-delegate with the votes. So we're trying to count those right now.
Right now. You talked earlier about North Charleston. I want to get back to that. Obviously, there's a big issue going on right now about the future of Prestige Preparatory Academy, that is. Who's right and who's wrong with this in this situation here?
I think that school's always had an issue, but isn't it for like gifted and talented, or is it just for black boys, or
So.
is it just solely black boys? I don't know what their status is. I have no clue.
What should the school district do? What should the school itself do?
Well, everybody gets up in arms about being segregated, but then we'll give you a segregated school. Tell me what sense that makes. Yeah, and this goes with the Burke thing.
Okay.
Is that there was this talk that the district will just rezone people, like we'll rezone Mount Pleasant and send them over to Burke. Like putting white kids in Burke is going to raise the achievement of the existing students, which it won't, I'll tell you that. That's not going to do it. Because if you look at the test scores in Mount Pleasant, and this is something that always bothers me too, is the black students in Mount Pleasant are not doing well. I mean, they might as well be in North Charleston. Even though they're in, predominantly white schools in Mount Pleasant, they're still underperforming, sadly. But what really bothers me, which I think should bother the black community, is that you have Latinos with English as their second language outscoring our native black Americans. And that would really bother me, especially because, it bothers me as a member of the white community, but as a member of the black community, that would really bother me that we have, maybe non-native citizens that are outpacing our native, English-speaking citizens.
How did we get here with that?
I have no idea, but it really does bother me.
What else is bothering you these days?
There's a lot, but I just can't, and I don't have my list with me.
Oh,
My
no.
list of bothers.
I'm sure I'll get a text.
I'll tell you.
Well, Elizabeth Moffly, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate this.
Thank you, Quintin.
Thank you.